Maybe the Browns should just go the younger, fresher, newer route for head coach. We are talking more about the Cleveland Browns and their head coach opening here today on At the Office. Make sure you leave a comment, subscribe, drop a like as well. That would really help us here. You see, I'm alone. Eric's a little sick, but I do have a co-host. I do have someone to bring in. This man is a legend now in the Cleveland sports community for his memes on TikTok and X. Everybody, welcome in Benchwarmer Sports. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, for sure. I of course saw you through some of the UCS stuff that went on with you. That video is freaking hilarious, by the way. So big ups to you for that and getting that feature. But was watching
Thank
some
you.
of your content, and I think we could have a good conversation here. So welcome on, and let them know where they can find you before we get into it.
Oh yeah, you guys can find me on YouTube at Benchwarmer Sports. That's where I usually post. TikTok Benchwarmer Sports underscore. That's where I usually post some lighthearted, some non-edited stuff. Usually stuff off the top of my head. TikTok is the best way to go, and then Twitter. You guys can find me at Warren Bench. Um, more so during Browns games. That's when I'm most active, but all the stuff from TikTok as well. I'll be posting on X. So those are the three main spots you can find me at.
Awesome, awesome. And let's get into talking a little bit about the head coaching search for the Cleveland Browns because Eric and I, when we sit down and we were going through all the different candidates' names they brought in, rumored names, whatever, we
Mhm.
were looking for a little more experience, a little bit of a newer, not a newer, but like experience, a background, maybe a retread in terms of a head coach. And a name that's been really popular on X, and I know you're a fan of this name as well. That's part of the reason we brought you on because I
Yeah.
want to be convinced on these younger names is one Grant Udinski, the offensive coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, why don't you give me a little background as to why you like him, what you've seen out of him? Of course, there's that viral video. I'll play it real quick where
Or
he's
a lot of different
mumbling
examples that
about sports
show
for a
his
minute
feel. I
straight.
think
Hmm.
the first one that shows up is kind of his feel in space. Right, you see some of these teams playing zone coverage where they have defenders who have vision on the quarterback.
I'll let that run. I'm not going to let that whole thing run, but go
Yeah.
ahead. Give me
Yeah.
your thoughts on one Grant Udinski.
I mean, what can I say about the guy? The more I learned about the guy, the more I just fell in love with him. It just the amount of praise that he has gotten from not just like small time guys, but big time guys, like guys we consider the better coaches in the NFL, like Kevin O'Connell. He took a shot on Grant Udinski, and Udinski was on a podcast, I believe, with Ari. Is it Ari Myrov? Is that his name?
I think
Uh,
so, yeah.
yeah. So he was on a podcast with him, and he's detailing, his experience with the Minnesota Vikings, and a lot of people like the big knock on Udinski is that he doesn't know everything. He's only been a NFL coach for 3 years, or at least that's like the most damning knock that I've seen on the guy. Well, here he was on the Ari Myrov podcast detailing all the stuff that he saw with Kevin O'Connell, and it sounded like, I mean, he was attached to the hip with Kevin O'Connell, like talking about different lifting plans for all the guys, like stuff that no other offensive assistant you would think would be involved with, and he was
Yeah.
just with everything. And so to me, when I was hearing him talk about it and just like all the different minutia and things like that, it sounded like he was sort of getting it was almost like an internship of like how to be like an NFL head coach, and it was
Yeah.
just like so interesting to me. But then, like, the one thing that you learn about the guy is, he's such a hard worker, man. He lives, eats, breathes football. And that's like the thing that stood out to me the most is that the guy was in his car. He was living out of his car. You probably have heard this because everybody
Yeah.
talks about it. Yeah. Living out of his car, driving Uber, trying to call so many different programs, whether it's college, NFL, just looking to be a football coach. And everybody that's talked about him has said that he's just a hard worker. He loves football. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to succeed. And I think that if you're the Cleveland Browns, you need someone that's going to come in here and sort of like, you don't want to be like a big brother. I feel like Kevin was sort of a little laid back,
Yeah.
To me, this guy, I think, is gonna be more hands-on and is gonna try and be more vocal where Kevin was a little bit more passive. So that's where I think that he's more better, at least my guy right now, to be the next head coach of the Browns.
So it doesn't give you any pause, though. The fact that, like, the thing to me is, yes, the lack of experience. That's fine. He had 5 years in the NFL, whether it was
Mhm.
an assistant or now all the way up to being a coordinator. But the age thing to me as well, I think of a guy like Miles Garrett in that locker room or Denzel Ward, some of the veterans in the locker room at this point that are a little bit older and not older in terms of, like, the grand scheme. They've got a lot of football career left in
Yeah.
them, but
Yeah.
older than Grant or around the same age as Grant, that doesn't concern you at all because to me, he's really young, man. Like really, really young. Like, are we taking a swing for a guy that's just too ripe right now? I guess is the best word.
I mean, sure. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I think that's a fair knock on him. Obviously, 30 years old. You'd rather him be like 35 at the very least. Like most people
Yeah.
would have him be 35. But to me, I don't really see his age as being a problem because to me, at least in my personal opinion, it doesn't matter how old you are as long as you're willing to show up and do the work and get the most out of people. I don't care what you are, who you are, as long as you can do the job effectively, that's all I care about. And to me, like I said, the more I've researched about the guy, the more you hear how former quarterbacks of it, like Trevor Lawrence was talking about him the other day, just absolute praise, saying that he would be calling me every single day almost, talking about like what he sees in different, how he plays, different, formations that the Jaguars are going to be running and how it can, be best utilized to go attack this defense and that. So to me, the guy is hungry enough. If the guy shows that he's more passionate about football, he's hungry enough to not be he's not egotistical from what I've heard.
Mhm.
He's hungry enough to want to learn, improve on the job. Is there going to be growing pains because he's 30 years old and has never had play calling experience? Sure. But to me, there's just so many other circumstances and different traits that he has shown and that people see in him that prove to me at least that he can be a good head coach in the future. Now, again, I think there's going to be growing pains for sure. But to me, there's something there with what I've heard, what I've researched. There's something there in the guy, and people are seeing it wherever he goes in Minnesota, in Jacksonville. There's something clearly there.
Yeah.
Just, are you willing to take a chance on a guy who's maybe a year early than a year too late? And that's, again, I did a video on my channel with Jordan Schultz, who basically said the Browns are willing to take a swing at a guy who may be a year too early, and they'd rather not be a year too late on these guys like Udinski or Shieldhouse. And Shieldhouse again he's my second favorite guy. So I'm a fan of the younger guys that are the candidates right now.
We'll get to Shieldhouse in a second too. I made a graphic for that. I think you're kind of right in the thought process that the Browns might take a swing at a younger guy. You think of Andrew Berry, where he was at in his career, how young he was when he became the GM of the Cleveland Browns. Now he's the one heading this search, and maybe he's trying to rub his magic off on someone else. And magic is a stretch. I don't know what you feel about Andrew Berry's job as the GM, how he's done so far.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um,
I don't know, magic would be the
he
word I would say it, but yeah.
yeah, but yes, he's still in the grand scheme of things, he's successful because he still has his job. That's, I guess, more so
Yeah,
what I'm trying to say.
fair
But
enough, yeah.
yeah, you point out guys like Trevor Lawrence, and that's interesting to me. I mean, there was a noticeable spike in terms of Trevor Lawrence's play this year. Finally, I think Jacksonville got to see a little bit out of what the hype was for Trevor Lawrence. We're talking about
Mhm,
his passer rating going up. Obviously, he threw for more yards, touchdowns, whatever. He played more games this year than last year, but
mhm, yeah,
he obviously passed the eye test a lot better than he has even in years past when they've done really good or had a winning record or wasn't like the year before where everything was a catastrophe and he gets hurt and he's off the season.
mhm,
So yes, I do think a Udinski could be interesting. I still just have pause because of the age thing, because of the lack of experience. I think the biggest thing the Cleveland Browns need in a head coach, and I've said it time and time again here on the channel, on the page, is someone that can build a culture and gain respect instantly. And it scares me to death because it's his first time, because he's so young, that even with all of the stuff that you've talked about, and I've heard the car story and all that, and I love that. As a
Yeah.
football guy, a former football player, former college football player, I love people who love football.
Mhm.
But in the same breath, you could love football and it just not be time yet. I think he'll be a head coach one day, just like I think Tommy Reese will be a head coach one day and probably very soon. But
Mhm.
I just, is it the right fit for us right now? Is my question.
I mean, I don't see why not, because I think you were right when you're talking about, Miles and Denzel and Grant, maybe not being as open to the idea of a younger guy being head coach. I'm going to say a hard truth that not a lot of Browns fans may not be ready to hear yet. They're sort of going away now. And this is what I'm going to say. Miles is getting older. He's going to be 30, 31 next year. Denzel's getting up there in age. Grant Delpit's going to be up there in age. You're getting a younger core in here now with Fannin, Schlesinger, Judkins, maybe Tyson Campbell is part of that young core now that he's locked up for at least a couple of years.
Right.
There's a younger group of guys here. Maybe Shador. Maybe Shador is going to be here long term. I see the shirt. Yeah, I know that's another topic we can talk about, maybe at a later date. But there's a younger core that's developing, or at least Andrew Barry is trying to develop. So obviously, like I've played on my channel, Schwartz has gotten endorsements from Miles and Denzel. Obviously, you need to take that into account because they're your two best players, right?
Right.
But if you're Andrew Barry, could you be looking towards the future? Because you can say, hey, Miles is the best at what he does. He's not going to be here forever. How much longer is he going to be here versus guys like maybe Schlesinger, Fannin,
Right.
those guys? And then, not to mention whoever you draft in the next two drafts, because ultimately, after 2027, which I think is probably going to be the last cornerstone draft that Barry's going to try and like at least recoup and rebuild everything from the Deshaun Watson mess.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
After that, I think he's going to, you're going to have all these young guys, and what better than to have a guy who's relatively, not that much older than them, who's obviously he's shown them something because they interviewed him yesterday, Saturday, for 3 hours. And then what did we hear? Literally less than 24 hours,
They're
right
booking
back.
him another.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
second
They're
interview.
booking him another
So
one.
obviously, again, there's something there with the guy. And if there's something there with the guy, to me, there's just so many things where I think he can be a perfect guy to come in here. Another thing that Browns fans may not like, I don't think we're going to be good in 2026. I don't think that's
Oh,
going to be the plan. That's not going to be, we're going for the quarterback in 27. That's probably what Barry's thinking. So 2026 may be a learning year, or at least a down year, and everyone's be like, okay, we're trying to be bad for the quarterback. What better of a way than to have a 30-year-old head coach who's never been a head coach before to say, hey, you come in here, we're going to be having a down year. We're not there yet. You can come in here, take a little bit, a little bit of bumps and bruises here, trying to figure your coaching style, whatever you want to do. 2027, though, you get your quarterback, and then we start flying. To me, I think that would be a better way than to have a guy like Mike McDaniel come in. I'm not a Mike McDaniel guy.
neither
I
am I.
I
Erik
am
is on cloud nine for him, and I don't get
I
it because
don't get
how
it.
he schemes an offense is just Stefanski again, and I don't want that.
Well, exactly. And then you had whatever the hell was going down in Miami with Tua and players
Right.
only meetings where they're not having the head coach involved and all this other stuff. Not to mention, is he going to want to go from Stephen Ross to Jimmy Haslam? I mean, talk about a marriage in hell. It's like
Right.
leaving an ex-wife who's been bad and then just taking another horrible ex-wife. But, but
No, I'm with you 100%. I think that man needs to go take an OC gig and kind of relax for
yeah,
a year or two and then put his name back in the
exactly.
cycle.
And
If
if I'm
that's
his,
for the betterment of his career, I'm not saying that because I want to stash him for later for the Browns or something
oh
like
yeah,
that. If one of the guys we no, he needs to take a step back and reevaluate. I said the same thing about Stefanski. I thought he should take a year to evaluate and then come back in like Vrabel did and whatnot. But
Yeah.
obviously he got a job this weekend, so good for him, I guess.
Yeah, I know. But that's why, like, I just see if I'm Mike McDaniel's agent, I'm telling him, dude, okay, you can take the interviews, that's fine. But for the love of God, go to Detroit. Go to Detroit, go to Philly, or
Yep.
go to Philly.
Yes.
Go
Right.
to one of those teams. You have all the talent in the world. You may not have AJ Brown if you go to Philly because he may be gone, depending on what Howie Roseman does. But go to one of those two spots, all the talent in the world offensively, stay there for 2 or 3 years, and then next cycle comes around. Hey, look at what I did with all this talent. Let's go and try and do that here at another team. And you're going to be what, 45 if he stays at a team for what, 2 or 3 years? He's still going to be
Yeah.
young. So he's going to be in like prime candidacy age for a lot of these other teams who are looking for an offensive mind should should the time arise.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on the McDaniel thing. I'm all the way good on that. The thing
Yeah.
that scares me the most is he really liked Dylan Gabriel as well. Like that was a thing,
Oh
and
my
I'm
god.
good on that experience for another year. So
I never heard
there's
that.
yeah, the Miami Dolphins were the other team super interested in Dylan Gabriel for the draft. It was us in Miami.
Oh
So
my god.
I'm all the way good on McDaniel for the Browns. I think he's a good coach. I think he'll pop back up and be good sometime. But to me, it's all about fit and what fit makes the most sense for the team and where you're going and what you bring to the table, right?
Mhm.
We've talked a little bit. We've mentioned the name Jim Schwartz, of course. He's another popular name in terms of Browns fandom just because of how popular he is with the defense, how good his defense is. The statistics of hiring internal to a head coach is not good. The record is well below 500 in terms of all the
Mhm.
coaches that got internally hired after a head coaching firing. Freddie Kitchens is also an example of this, by the way.
Yeah.
If you want to remember that one, I sure don't. But do you have any thoughts on Schwartz, being a head coach and then if not, bringing him in, especially if you do a guy like Shielhaas or Udinski as a coach here, kind of being a veteran voice to kind of back him up a little bit?
I mean, I said this before too. It wouldn't, I don't wanna say it feels like you're settling, but it feels like you're settling.
100%.
And
It's the fallback.
yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm not opposed to, like, Jim Schwartz being the head coach, but, like, if you're gonna get my reaction, I'm be like, "Okay, yay, I guess." But, like,
Yeah.
the last time he was a head coach was, like, 15 years ago, and think about how different the NFL has been in the last 15 years.
Yep.
It to me, like, as a defensive coordinator, still got it. Obviously, still has it, still one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. As a head coach, though, I'm not as favorable to the idea of Jim Schwartz being the top guy as like what Daryl Ryder or other guys were saying that
Yeah.
he's the guy and that's it, and anyone else should be, shunned and pushed to the wayside. No, if that's the case, then we have a whole lot of other problems to talk about with the Cleveland Browns. But again, yeah, he's not the worst option. He's not my favorite, but if he's the guy, I just hope that maybe they're looking at Shielhaus or Udinski to be the offensive coordinator for and they say, hey, second time around, hey, if we take Jim Schwartz, we elevate him to be our head coach, would you be willing to be the offensive coordinator under him? Because once again, these guys have never called plays before.
Right.
And so you get that opportunity because Udinski may not get that opportunity with Liam Cohen down in Jacksonville. Shielhaus, obviously, you got McVay who's calling plays. So maybe you try and make that argument to them. Who knows? But yeah, he's not my top guy, but I don't mind giving him a second look. But obviously, out of those guys who got the second look, the only guy I would say no, absolutely not to is Todd Monken. So
Yeah, there
we'll
was
get
a
him.
point in time where I was decently high on Todd, just
Really?
because of how good Baltimore's offense was at times, especially Lamar. He was the OC with Lamar being an MVP. But the
Hmm.
more I hear about him, it's the same thing with like Brian Flores. Brian Flores was the
Hmm.
first name as the Stefanski train started to leave the station at the end of the season. Flores was a name that I really liked at first for all the reasons that major people bring him up all the time. But as
Mm.
I've learned more and heard more and gone through this process, I've moved further and further away from wanting either of those guys.
Yeah.
Um, I like Mudkin because he's offensive minded, but it scares me with the Kevin Stefanski comparisons that you hear all over the place as well. There's a lot of other reasons as well. To
Mhm.
me, Schwartz is the fallback, though. I think Schwartz could be a good option for us, but it does scare me with the track record and the history of internal hires becoming head coaches. I do think that it makes a lot of sense to keep him around if you hire one of these young guys like Shielhaas or Udinski,
Mhm.
just to have a little bit of backing. They did the same thing with Freddie Kitchens and actually Todd Munkin when
Yeah.
that coaching staff got around. And I think that's a good thought process. And comparing it to Freddie Kitchens to me it's non comparable. That was a the biggest swing and a miss ever. But
Yeah.
it's a good thought process, is kind of what I think. I want to talk a little bit about Shield Haas because we haven't brought it up yet.
Mhm.
He has a extensive background in college football, but he also has a background with the Rams. He is the pass game coordinator, and as you alluded to, he's not a play caller. He's not even the offensive coordinator. To me,
Mhm.
that's my biggest sticking point. It feels like we're going for the backup's backup and trying to make a something out of nothing happen because he's a McVay guy. So what is your appeal into Shield Haas, and what do you think? Are you higher on him or Udinski?
Oh god, that's been the question I've been actually grappling with in my head because to me they're like 1A and 1B. I like both of them a lot. Shieldhouse, I definitely think has more experience with, you know, being a coach at least with full-time level. Obviously, you put up that graphic. He was in Iowa State for a number of years with Matt Campbell. Came over in 2023 or 2024, I believe, with
2024. Yep.
2024 to LA with McVay. I honestly, you wanted to ask me about my dream scenario. If you could get Udinski as head coach and then try and convince Shieldhouse to be the offensive coordinator, because I feel like he is a guy that I would be more comfortable taking the reins with the offensive play calling than Udinski just because of the experience. He's been a wide receivers and running backs coach. He was a quarterback in college. So
Yep.
he's been with almost every single facet of the offense, maybe outside of the offensive line. I would not be as hesitant to have Shieldhouse be a play caller than I would probably with Udinski. Um, but as like a head coach, I feel like Udinski could probably be a little bit more of a motivator than Shieldhouse, but like again, the more I learned about Shieldhouse, the one article I believe was from one of the guys from Iowa State, basically just said like he talks to a lot of people. Everyone tries to be like a salesperson, right? He said Shieldhouse was like the only guy that was honest, personable, just wanted to talk football. And to me, that's a guy who I think can also be a very strong candidate because maybe I don't know. I don't want to say what Kevin was or wasn't. I just there's just from the outside looking in, there just seemed to be a little bit of a miscommunication between like what he was trying to portray versus what actually was going on, right?
Yeah. Yes. 100%.
Yeah, and so to me, if you get a guy like Shieldhouse, again, this is only off of like one or two articles, but like again, the more you try and find about these guys, there's like only two articles about them because nobody's heard
No.
about these
100.
guys until like the last couple of weeks. So that's been the issue. But yeah,
Yeah, you're 100% playing the guessing game as much as you can right now, because even as knowledgeable fans, people who make content regularly
mhm,
about football, the league, any of the leagues really,
yeah,
uh, I couldn't have told you who Nate Shieldhouse was a month and a half ago,
no,
if I'm being brutally
oh
honest. Same thing with Udinski to a lesser extent. Like, I knew the name because he's the offensive coordinator in the NFL, but not anything that I knew about him, the car story, any of that
yeah,
prior to the last couple weeks and their names getting really caught on fire and catching traction online in terms of people being excited. I think they're both interesting cases because I see Andrew Barry wanting to be this gambler and trying to go out there and get the next McVay, and that's what these two names kind of scream to me, is trying to get that next big up and coming long term name, as
mhm,
opposed to maybe playing it a little bit safer with some guy with some tenure experience, maybe a prior head coach.
mhm,
Uh, Sala is an example of that that I think of too, that I think is popular for a lot of the head coaching openings, but we haven't even interviewed him, and I don't think that's going to even happen at this point. I think
No.
we're closer than a lot of people probably think, especially with all of these second interviews coming up this week. So make sure you stay tuned and check in because if there's news that breaks, we will cover it here on the page for
Mhm.
all the listeners out there. It's interesting though. I could see them really going this route. I don't think that they're going to end up with Schwartz. I don't think that they're going to end up with Munkin, and I hope they don't end up with McDaniel. But I could see Andrew Barry liking McDaniel because it's the same young offensive mind idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It just scares me still with the lack of experience that they both have at this level. But on the contrary, if you hit that swing, if you swing and you make the hit and you hit the home run or a grand slam or whatever, then we look pretty damn good. And I think we're a little bit closer sometimes than a lot of people think with the talent on this roster to just be more competitive than what 2025 was.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I like I said, I to the people who kept saying the Browns' job was the worst in the league, have you not seen what the Arizona Cardinals are?
Yep.
Have you not
I'm
seen
with you.
like even the same thing with the Tennessee Titans? Now, yeah, Tennessee may have a quarterback. They have well, I think they have the most cap space in the league. But
Yeah.
like you got to rebuild that team from the ground up. At least with the Browns, you got a very like a top 10 defense and some young pieces and parts on the offense. And maybe who knows with Shador Sanders. I know you guys are higher on him than I am, but
Yeah, we are.
yeah,
We are
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see with that next year. I mean, but yeah, Arizona to me is by far the worst option that any coach can go to. So all that stuff I was hearing with like national reporters saying, "Oh, Cleveland's job is the worst. Who would want to go to Cleveland?" I don't
No.
understand that.
I don't understand it either. The Raiders are a cheap franchise despite their nice, shiny new stadium.
Mhm.
Arizona to me is the worst job for sure because you
By
have a
far.
whole mess to unravel there with Kyler Murray. I think of the Dolphins job being a mess of a job too with
Yeah.
Tua, and I don't like their talent. They have like two or three players in my mind, whereas we have a whole rookie class right now. We could go through and argue the ranking of all the jobs. I don't
Oh
think the
yeah.
Browns is the best job on the market by any
No,
means.
no.
Dealing with Jimmy Haslam does not sound fun to me whatsoever, but at least he'll spend money and at least we have draft capital.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and at least you have a GM who likes to trade back, and who knows if you're able to survive for 4 years, because who know the whole knock about Jimmy was that he fires everybody after 1 year. This year
Yeah.
Stefanski was six years. Who knows? Maybe you make it to 2029 and you're able to play in a dome. Who knows?
Yeah.
That could also be an intriguing offer too to somebody. So who knows?
Yeah, you got the nice shiny new home that you can go coach in and try to go win a championship. It feels so weird to say championship in a Cleveland Browns video, but that's the goal at the end of the day. You
I
know what
know.
I
Yeah,
mean?
winning in Brook Park. That's going to be the absolute dream scenario. Winning in Brook Park. Cannot wait for that. So
No, neither can I, man. I can't wait. The Brook Park Browns are coming soon. Tell them where they can find you one more time, man.
yeah, you guys can find me on YouTube at Benchwarmer Sports, TikTok Benchwarmer Sports underscore, and on Twitter at Warm Bench. Those are the three platforms that I'm most active on, and we do some Cleveland Browns content and football content as well. Make sure you guys subscribe to both of our channels because we all do some amazing work.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. We'll have to chop it up soon, especially as more news, more off-season effery, for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, continues to pan out. And you know, it's nice to meet you. Nice to have you on. Nice to really get this whole thing going.
Yeah, you too, man. It was a pleasure. I thank you for reaching out. And like I said, this is the first time I've done an interview. Hopefully, we can, chop it up on my channel and who knows, maybe come back here and talk some more Browns. But this was very fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate having you on, you coming on, all of that as well. And I'll gladly hop on anytime for a video for you. We'll talk soon, man. Let me hit this outro real quick. Thank you guys for tuning into At the Office. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all of the fun things. I'm not hitting Eric's intro, so everybody stay blessed, be easy, have a great night. Peace.